We are framed and ready. What's good, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So, beginning of the month, I set a goal that I was going to post 4 videos to YouTube. As of right now, I only have 1 uploaded, so I have 3 more to go, and we have about 7 days left in the month of August. August has been extremely busy for me. So a lot of the major production houses and big production companies are closed because of COVID-19 guidelines, and a lot of other smaller production companies are not working as much as they would like, just to mitigate the spread of COVID-19 with other guidelines. So this has generated a lot of increase in terms of my work activity, because I have a lot of video clients that want to shoot more because they're home and they don't want 5 people coming into their house. You know, I normally operate as a one-man band. I have a C500 Mark II, I have a C200, I have Sennheiser MKH416 mics, I have wireless live, I have all these different things that honestly I bought intentionally as an actor for my own film productions, and I got into shooting and recording and cinematography and videography work to supplement my income, because as an actor you're gonna work a lot less. You're gonna be unemployed a lot more than you're gonna be unemployed, you know, for a lot of actors and artists. So it was an opportunity for me to have a hobby. I always recommend, if you're going into acting, have a hobby. It just was beneficial for me, for my hobby to kind of be cinematography and to learn more about it. So when I'm on set as an actor working, I'm literally by the gaffer, I'm literally around DPs. That's kind of how I learned. I remember working on film sets and being like, what's that? Oh, that's a Red One, that's a digital camera. Oh, that's 4K. Oh, what's a T-stop? I'm used to f-stops, and T-stops is for film, and f-stops are normally for photography cameras. So learning all these different things about daylight, color balance, temperature, and I'm not going to get too techie, but the point of this video, I wanted to talk briefly about low light shooting. So I'm keeping myself accountable. Do never let your gear be the focus of your content creator, unless you're giving feedback or doing a tutorial on gear. So that's the reason why I'm doing this video today. So I wanted to briefly talk about low light shooting. So I'm shooting in a car in my garage before I run to Ralph's, pick up some groceries, because I still got some more editing to do. And 2 things I understand about low light shooting. The difference between DSLRs, an iPhone, or the sensor. The bigger the sensor is, generally the camera is going to have a better ability to shoot in low light. Like even for certain cell phones that can shoot really good in low light, the image is soft. Not like what you're seeing right now. I'm shooting on my Canon EOS R, which is a full frame camera. And full frame cameras are normally going to shoot better in low light than Super 35 APS-C. Full frame sensor mean if I put a 35mm lens on my EOS R, the focal length is going to be at 35mm. Now if I'm shooting with like my Canon M6 Mark II, which is an APS-C sensor known as a Super 35, it's a 1.6 crop factor. So that 1.6 crop factor, I have to multiply that 1.6 times 35mm, and that's gonna take me closer to like a 52mm lens. So full frame cameras normally do better in low light. Then you have cameras like new Sony a7S III coming out, does insanely well in low light. Now cinema cameras for years, I think there's a bad misconception that if a camera is super expensive, it should do really well in low light. A Arri Alexa is not going to do better than, which is a $100,000 camera, is not going to do better than the Sony a7S III. But with that said, so if you're shooting in low light, 1, try to go for a full frame camera. Number 2, the other thing to consider is shooting on a prime lens. Right now, I'm shooting on my Canon EOS R. I'm using the RF35 1.8 lens, STM, image stabilization. So the image stabilization doesn't affect the low light shooting. That's just more from going handheld. It takes out a little bit of the shakes. The macro, it's also a macro lens that helps when I'm going close. Like with a macro lens, when I start off, it allows me to focus a lot closer than a regular lens. Like a regular lens, I might not be able to get this close and the camera be able to focus. So that's the importance of a macro lens. But none of those things affect low light shooting. What affects is the f-stop. Now, because it's 1.8, which they call a fast lens, or the aperture can get wide. Whenever you have a lens that has like a 1.4, 1.2, that means it's a fast lens, which means that the bigger the aperture is the more light you let into your camera. Think of it as like your eyeball. If you go outside on a sunny day, you normally squint. and you can see everything in front of you. But if you go outside in the middle of the night, your eyes is wide open and your field of view is very narrow. Why they call it a shallow depth of field. So that's why when you're shooting and your aperture is wide open, the background is blurred out. It's like walking outside in the middle of the night, like your eyes is wide open because there's no light coming in. You only can see like what's right in front of you. So that's like a good kind of correlation to help you understand if you're not familiar with aperture. That's how I learned about it. So if you're outside on a sunny day, you squint and you can see hundreds of yards away. You know what I mean? Like, so that's when they call stopping down. So generally, like with your kit lens, if you just bought a camera and it came with a kit lens, normally they say like 3.5, 1855, 3.5 to 5.6. Now that is not a fast lens. You're not really, they don't really consider your lens fast unless it can go lower than 2.8. You know, 2.8 is normally on zoom lenses that are very high quality, like Canon L series lenses, Sony G Master. So you have some zoom lenses like a 24 to 70 that could do 2.8. For a zoom lens, that's pretty good. One of my favorite lenses is a Sigma 18 to 35, and it does 1.8, which is, as far as I know, the fastest zoom lens I know made by Sigma, and that's the Sigma Art. But that lens only works on APS-C cameras. It doesn't work on full frame. If you put it on a full frame camera, you have to deal with the vignette, and so that's the dark circles around because it wasn't meant for a full frame camera. So when it comes down to shooting in low light, having a full frame camera, one, having a fast lens, no matter what camera company you decide to invest in, I'm heavily invested in Canon. I choose the best camera for my workflow, so I'm probably going to get that Sony a7S III to have that extremely low light monster. But with that said, whether you go Sony, whether you go Canon, Fuji, Panasonic, whatever it is, most companies have something called a Nifty 50, which is a 50mm version. That's normally a 1.8. It's a very affordable lens. The build is normally cheap, but in terms of the optical quality, to have a lens that's $100 that can go 1.8, if you're getting into photography, videography, the one lens I'm always going to recommend that you have in your kit is that Nifty 50, that 50mm 1.8, because it's one of those lenses that for a very low price is going to give you extremely high quality as you learn more about your lenses and you build out your gear kit. So with that said, when you are shooting in low light, there's a company called Neat Video, which is, it's going to remove noise. So when you're shooting in low light and you don't have enough light, your image introduces noise, the grain. Now, the grain that you see in film when you're watching a movie is different from the grain from a DSLR or a cell phone, because film cameras have an organic grain to it. Like when we shoot with a DSLR mirrorless camera, or cameras that are not that expensive, it's more of a digital noise, so it's not as pleasant. So that's why when we watch an old film, the noise looks really, really good. We're on a DSLR, mirrorless camera, etc., etc. It's not the same, but you can use a company like a plugin like Neat Video to reduce some of the noise to give you a more acceptable image. So the three things is shoot if you can with a full frame camera, shoot with a prime lens if you can, consider that Nifty 50, and 3, use a plugin like Neat Video, which is a noise reducer. So I hope this video was helpful. Remember, lighting is so important. One little side note, I know a lot of people are starting to build content, shoot, fashion photographers, travel enthusiasts, beauty bloggers, etc. If you were starting out and you had to ask me, would I invest in a nice set of lights or a DSLR? Knowing what I know now, I would have invested in a nice set of lights and shot on an iPhone than buy a nice DSLR and have no lighting. Because when you're shooting stuff like fashion, then you don't want to shoot low light. You want to make sure the image is totally in focus, that it's pleasant, and lights are going to help you out so much. As I said before, one of the things, the correlations that generally, other than the Nifty 50 lens, when you shoot with lenses that have fast aperture, they're more expensive. So a Canon 51.2 is a $1,500 lens. The Canon 51.8 is a $100 lens. So those apertures are not like, oh, but a 1.8 to 1.2, those are fractions. So 1.2 is a lot bigger than 1.8, more than you would think, you know? So when you hear like, oh, something's a 2.8, but I might as well get the lens that's a 4-stop. 2.8 And four, you got to think in terms of fractions. So those numbers are huge, especially in terms of your shallow depth of field. Invest in your lights. Learn lighting as much as you can. Don't let that stop your storytelling. Grow with your storytelling. Get motivated. Get comfortable. Get in a groove. I don't want you watching. It's like, oh man, I can't start shooting until I get a nice set of lights. No, that's not the point I'm trying to make. What I'm saying, just keep that in mind. As you grow, challenge yourself to hone your craft and everything around that, right? So learn about lighting, watch YouTube channels, but still create your projects, because you do need a steady amount of motivation and a steady amount of like, oh, I shot this video, it can get better, but I'm happy I completed. Staying safe. I hope everybody's family's blessed. I hope everybody's doing what they can to mitigate the spread of COVID-19. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications so you can stay tuned on the next 2 posts I'm gonna do before the end of the month. And if you got comments, comment down below. I would love to answer your questions. I hope I did. If I left something out, feel free to shoot me a comment down below. I respond. I want to create more videos that are helpful. I've just been working a lot lately, so I don't know necessarily what my audience wants to see, but I want to grow. I want you to help me grow, and I want to help you grow. So the best way to do that is through communication. So until next time, be courageous, stay creative, and deuces.